Good morning. Welcome to Holston Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm the Reverend Tiffany Sapp, the minister of this church. My pronouns are she and her, and I am so very glad you're here on a holiday weekend, on a rainy day. It really says something that you decided to join us this morning. Our opening hymn is This Is My Song, which is hymn number 159 in the gray hymnal. Please rise in body or spirit to sing hymn number 159, This Is My Song. We gather to remember those who could not grow old and those forced to grow old long before their time. We gather to mourn and grieve with one another all of our losses, the people, the stories, the loved ones, and the futures that could have been. We gather to do the hard work of facing the difficult realities of our present and our past, where there is conflict, violence, war, and hatred. We gather to hold space for silence as we try to make meaning of our history to help us work for peace and justice today. We gather to rekindle our source of hope for our future by recognizing in one another our shared humanity as we join in a concerted commitment for a better tomorrow. We gather because we need community to do all of this holy work. Please join us in a moment of silent contemplation as we prepare for our time together. Thank you for being with us today, the day before Memorial Day. We are here to remember and grieve for those who have lost their lives in military service, called by our first principle, which says, first and foremost, we honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person. or, in the words of our call to worship, recognizing in one another our shared humanity. On the surface, that's an ideal that sounds easy to agree with, but what does it mean to live it? And what does it mean to live it specifically on this day? Our chalice lighting holds space for all of the emotions of this day. This is called by loss, called by peace.
We come this day called by war, by the suffering we inflict and endure when minds across borders fail to reason and compromise. We come this day called by loss, the deaths of those who serve in our name, those whose lives end before their natural course in service to a cause greater than their own. We come this day called by hope, hope that we will, in some season, finally surrender our swords for plowshares. And we come this day called by peace. May we hear its song. May we proclaim its promise. May our remembrance today renew our struggle. We can never stay or rest. Good morning. I am Sarah with the pronouns she, her, and I'm your service leader today. We welcome you, whether this is your first or your 1,000th Sunday with us. We are a beloved community made of many origins and many beliefs, diverse sexualities and genders, and we are made stronger by our diversity. We welcome you. Whether you join online or in the chairs around us, we are stronger because of your presence. We grow, we learn, and we love together. Just as you are welcome here. Thank you for silencing your cell phones, and thank you for observing the perfume-free zone. We also have activity bags by the welcome table for any of our younger friends who might need something to do during the service. Just make sure to leave them back there for next week when the service ends. We also have nursery for kids ages kindergarten and under, and you can bring your kids down to the nursery after the time for all ages, or earlier if you like. Masks are optional, but they are supported here. Our services are recorded and are on YouTube. Please stay home if you're sick. We'd now like to invite the kids, youth, parents, and young at heart to join us for a Time for All Ages story here up front. We are managing the camera angles to keep you off camera, so you don't have to worry about being on YouTube. So come join us for a story.
Good morning. Everyone's so quiet today. It's a rainy day, right? Well, here's a question for you today. I'd like you all and you all to think about a time and a place where you felt safe and at peace. Can you think about that? What were the signs or the feelings or the sounds or the sights that showed you that it was safe, that it was okay to be at peace? Do we have any thoughts about that? Quiet often shows us that we can be at peace and that we're safe. I like that. Do we have other thoughts about what shows us safety or peace? People, knowing that we're around people that we can trust. That might be a parent or a grandparent for one of you all. Those are all good signs that we're safe and at peace. The birds. Birds usually let us know everything's okay. If we don't hear any birds, that might be a sign that something's going on we don't see. Yeah, that's good. Well, so for people in the United States military, there's a special sign that says you're okay and you're at peace. And it's a melody called taps. It's only 24 notes long. It was composed by a general in the Civil War and by his bugler. Do y'all know what a bugler is? That's a person who plays on a horn, a bugle. It's hard to remember how important bugle calls were in the military once upon a time. In the days before radio, bugle calls were the only way military units could communicate to groups over large areas. They didn't have things like cell phones. They had to use horns. In the 1860s, long time ago, the end of the day was really important. If there was time and peace enough to play taps, that was a signal that the camp was relatively safe. It meant that you were not under attack. It meant that there were no enemy soldiers to worry about. To a camp of soldiers, the notes of taps meant that unless you were on guard duty that night, you could close your eyes and sleep in peace. They say that the first time that taps was ever played was at a service for fallen soldiers that also took place, the first time taps was played at a service for fallen soldiers was also during the Civil War. See, they would usually fire a 3-gun salute for soldiers when they died, but it wasn't a good idea to do that in the middle of a battle when they had just kind of made peace, because someone might think that they were starting to fight again, and they didn't want to send that kind of signal, right? So instead they had the idea that we're going to play taps instead of firing the guns to make sure that there wasn't a misunderstanding and people didn't start fighting again. So taps began to mean the same thing. It meant that it was safe and quiet at the end of the day. We could turn our lights off, and for the soldiers that they were memorializing, it meant that they could have their rest too. So we're going to listen to taps right now. It's coming. I gave lots of time on this slide of the poppies. Pretty, isn't it? This weekend, many people in the U.S. are remembering and honoring people who died while serving in the military. So you might get to hear taps again. If you do, maybe you can stop and think about every soldier who may have been afraid, and then this signal that they had that they were safe and could be at peace. We try to make our congregation a place where people can feel safe and at peace too. And we work outside of these walls to build a whole world like that. So use your brains today and think about what peace means to you and what we can do to create communities where we feel safe. After the service, if you want to come up and tell me about what you learned today, I'll let y'all have a prize from the prize basket, all right? Thanks for listening to my story, and y'all can go back to your seats. American songs about combat soldiers coming home or not coming home have existed at least since the Civil War. It stirs a unique chord within the hearts of people who are waiting at home, not sure if they're going to see their loved ones again. One of the most popular songs of recent times in this spirit is Travelin' Soldier by the Dixie Chicks, which was recorded when so many of our young people were being sent to Afghanistan. The song, though, was written by Bruce Robison before that, when Vietnam was the destination of the soldiers. So this is more than a song, it's a story, and one that is definitely going to connect us to the heart of this day. On this day especially, I am moved to consider how deep the sorrows can go when we share our joys and sorrows, and how powerfully necessary that makes the contrast of our joys. Thank goodness we can hold our joys and sorrows in community. If you'd like to share a joy or concern in person, please use these candles cards, which are located on that back table. And if you'd like to share a joy or a concern from a distance, please email me at minister@hvuuc.org. We did have one card. There's not a name on the card, but we can still hold their concern in our heart. A close friend of mine found out that her dog has stomach cancer. They're keeping him comfortable for the month left of life that he has. And I have a joy and a sorrow. I am so joyful and so grateful for the service of our outgoing board, and I'm going to miss working with them in this way. I'd like to say a special thank you to Ann Johnson, our president, for her time this year. You will notice that we have a different candle set up today. We're trying to allow for 2 lines of candle lighters, and I think it worked pretty darn good last week. This gives both sides of the room good access. This space and the tools we use will probably continue to evolve, so just hang out with us as we are learning how to do this differently, and we will continue to manage the camera for your privacy so that you can come up and light candles without worries. If you wish to light your own candle, approach the side of the table that is closest to you, and the closer candle keeper will assist you. And if you wish for us to light a candle for you, please raise your hand until I acknowledge you, and I will light a candle for you. And we light our first candle for you who are not in the building, but are ever in our hearts and our minds.
Our reading today is from the book War Zone Faith, a book written by Unitarian Universalist Army Chaplain George Tiger. His book is a collection of devotions that were first written for the troops that he was deployed with in Afghanistan, which he then revised for all of us in his book. In this reflection, he has just returned from doing the chaplain's work of sending a dead soldier back home. As an Army chaplain, my job is to help young men and women make sense of all of this, but there are times I cannot make sense of it myself. In this place, existential questions are not philosophy discussed at coffee hour. While every human being must struggle with what it means to be human and thus to be mortal, zipping a black bag over the breathless body of a friend puts a new sense of urgency on the questions of life and death. That is one of the reasons I am here, why I became an Army chaplain, and why I rumbled down the crowded and dangerous streets of Kandahar city nearly every day. As a Unitarian Universalist, I understand there are no easy answers. Instead, I seek to engage the young men and women I meet in this struggle for human meaning. Many chaplains do not share this approach to ministry. They offer the easy answers. They imagine a deity that has charted each of our courses in life from our first breath to our last. I cannot share this point of view. If this is true, has God placed some of us on a collision course with an IED? Some tell soldiers to pray the sinner's prayer and never fear death again. If your friend never said these words, should you fear for him? Easy answers lead to difficult questions. So why not just start with the questions?
There are no easy answers. And while I feel called to live out that truth every day of my life, I feel it especially strongly on this day before Memorial Day. The questions are big and difficult. How do we make sense of the tragic loss of life? How does the inherent worth and dignity of all people guide us as we approach war and death? How can we create space within ourselves to work for peace and to honor the fallen? Today I am still seeking, and if I cannot offer a satisfying conclusion to this observance, then I can at least embrace the struggles and the questions that I am not alone in holding. I can recognize the complex feelings that bubble up for each of us on this day. Let's consider the intentions and the origins of Memorial Day. The holiday was first widely observed on May 30th, 1868, and was called Decoration Day. It was instituted by a former Union general after the Civil War, and its purpose was to decorate graves with flowers, wreaths, and flags. I wonder what it would have felt like back then to have emerged from the horrors of the Civil War, where family fought family and there was nowhere safe to retreat to, where war was everyone's problem. Everyone knew someone who died. The first people who laid wreaths on tombstones knew firsthand just how ugly things could get. These first commemorators knew, in a way that many of us do not, the fragility of life. They would see our sixth principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, from this position of depth and loss. And they would understand what could go wrong when humanity loses sight of the first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. When Chaplain George Tiger wrote to the soldiers under his care in Afghanistan, he often shared his observations of the people in Afghanistan, speaking of their worth and dignity. He was especially struck by watching kids playing in a playground that was encircled by a Taliban graveyard. And this image confronted him with the hard questions. What does it mean that these kids found a place to play surrounded by death? What does it mean that we live in a world where we have to? Chaplain Tiger said, if humility is the heart's truthful response to unknowing, pride and superiority are ways to defend against the painful truth we witness in war. I do not understand why the world is so unfair, why my child is safe and the Afghan child is not. If I tell myself it is because we are better than them, then the world makes sense, and I can remain safely entombed in my self-imposed ignorance. But if I am humble, I can admit there is never any good reason for the suffering of a child. I can honestly say that the world does not make sense. I can face the truth that whatever meaning there is in war depends on my response to suffering, injustice, and pain. Many of Chaplain Tiger's reflections, written first for the troops that he was deployed with, are constant reminders of the worth and dignity, the human reality of the people of Afghanistan. An uncomfortable road to travel, but a necessary one. Today, the worth and dignity of those who have served and the worth and dignity of those who live in countries that we have occupied stand side by side uncomfortably, made more uncomfortable by the truth that the ones who start the wars and profit from them are never the ones that put their lives on the line. And I feel drawn to tell some of their stories, because that is what today is about. These multitudes who served, protected, and died, some were drafted, some signed up of their own free will. Their motivations are as varied as they are, some to protect others, some because their financial situation gave them a few alternatives, some to participate in proud family traditions. They filled a variety of roles, from combatant to nurse, from chaplain to the multitude of support and logistics positions. Those who did make it back and saw prolonged conflict often didn't want to talk about it. Phil Olson made it back from Vietnam, though it changed him in fundamental ways. He writes in his journal, "I would like to say one thing right here. War is not fun. War is not pleasant. War is nasty, dirty, frightening, and often sickening to experience. If you meet anyone who says they enjoyed being in war, they are lying to you. There are things that happen in war that should never be discussed by anyone." His granddaughter, that shared this journal with me, confirmed, Opa did not talk about these things. The closest he got was this journal entry. Worth and dignity were in short supply for Phil over there, and they are in short supply for him when he got home from Vietnam too, tragically. By the time Jacob Fletcher got to Iraq, we had learned. We as a people were determined to treat our soldiers better, no matter what we thought about the wars themselves. Jacob's story was profiled in Forward magazine. When Jacob was 8 years old, he filled out an advertisement in a magazine to enlist in the Army. When he was not successful the first time, he tried again. His mom said, "I had recruiters calling my house asking for Private Fletcher. He always gave me a run for my money," she said. The terror attacks in 2001 had a profound effect on Fletcher and led to his enlistment when he was 27 years old. His mom wasn't surprised at all, considering the phone calls she had gotten when he was 8. In one of his many letters home, Fletcher wrote about Iraqi children who had been burned, saying that it broke his heart seeing them suffering, and that he would gladly die to defend these Iraqi children. In another letter, he asked his mother to mail letters and care packages to one of his friends who wasn't receiving any support from home. What started with one package has turned into a family tradition that Kenny continued after her son's death with the establishment of Jacob's Light Foundation. To this date, the organization has sent more than 400,000 pounds worth of care packages to troops in all branches of the military. A beautiful, loving legacy. Jacob died when he was 28 years old in Iraq. Like Jacob, Dan Bullock was eager to enlist before he was actually old enough to. His story comes from the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund. He was the youngest American service member to be killed in the Vietnam War at the age of 15. How did he get into Vietnam at 15? You're about to find out. Jacob and his family moved to Brooklyn, New York, following his mother's death when he was very young. As a 14-year-old black teen in New York with no money for higher education, he saw military enlistment as the opportunity for a promising future. When he was just 14 years old, Bullock walked into a U.S. Marine Corps recruitment station. He had falsified the date on his birth certificate to read December 21st, 1949, so that he could pass as 18 years old. Bullock enlisted in the Marine Corps on September 18th, 1968. His family was completely unaware of his decision until he came home with papers in hand. In a New York Times story, Bullock's father had said that his son had hoped to become a pilot or a firefighter. He insisted that his son get an education, but Bullock told him that enlisting was the quickest way to get that education. The kid took a great risk to build his future. Bullock was a boy large in stature, but despite his size, he was still very much a boy. He kept to himself, and his comrades took notice. They picked up on Bullock's reserved nature and felt it necessary to take him under their wings. His brothers did their best to take care of this young teen who had appeared in their ranks. On June 7th, 1969, Bullock was killed by small arms fire while on night watch at An Hoa Combat Base. He's buried in his hometown of Goldsboro, North Carolina. And one last story. This one from the Stories Behind the Stars project about World War II Army nurse Ellen Gertrude Ainsworth. She was just 24 when she lost her life, saving the lives of others. She was born to a farmer and a homemaker in Dunn, Wisconsin. Her friends and family knew her as a caring girl who loved to sing and had a beautiful voice. A classmate recalled her as being a leader, friendly, kind, dedicated to her studies, and a young woman who wanted to be wherever the excitement was. When she attended nursing school, she was remembered as the life of the party. There's even an incident where she organized the singing of Christmas carols over the public address system in the hospital when she was a nursing student. Her military service brought her to a military hospital in Anzio, Italy, which was nicknamed a half acre of hell. Anzio was where the American and British troops had made a surprise landing behind the German lines. The fighting was fierce along the front lines, which were so close to the hospital that the wounded troops could just walk from the front lines to the hospital if they were physically able to. At one point, Ellen wrote home to her sister Lydia, sharing about the suffering of her boys. In a speech, Sister Lydia shared part of that letter, stating that her sister wished she could do more to protect them, ease and comfort their pain, or halt their deaths, but there was just so little she could do. Her courage under fire saved many lives in the hospital when it was being shelled. While many doctors and nurses had fled for safety, she stayed and cared for and protected the wounded soldiers that could not flee. She took shrapnel injuries that would end her life 4 days later, but in the process, she saved many, many lives. Her bright spirit shined upon this world for 24 years, but she left many gifts in the wake of her short life. I think her personality shines forth in a Christmas poem that she sent to her hometown newspaper just months before she died. This is a Christmas greeting poem by Lieutenant Ellen G. Ainsworth. My home is a tent. I sleep on a cot. You have snow, but we have not. This note brings greetings from far and near to all of those beings that I hold dear. Season's greetings through the year. And contrary to custom, I'm glad you're not here. And that really does say it all, doesn't it? Ellen, Dan, and Jacob, young people characterized by courage and compassion, and all of the multitudes like them would say, I'm glad you're not here. Many would say, I am here so that you are not. When I contemplate their stories, I get the feeling that Chaplain Tiger is right, that this is not a day for easy answers. Instead, it is a day for witnessing these young people and all the others that they represent and remembering them. For that reason, I would like our response today to not be discussion, but to be contemplation, prayer, and remembering. Please join me in a moment of silence, of contemplation, or prayer. There will be some moments of speaking and some moments of silence. Spirit of life, we enter into this season of Memorial Day surrounded by such a cloud of witnesses. We remember, first of all, the women and men who are currently serving in the armed forces, and we pray for their safe return. We also acknowledge that there are women and men who will not return, and we grieve their passing. We pause to honor their service and their sacrifice. We also pause this hour to give thanks for all the women and men who have served in the nation's armed services. Those of us who have not served cannot fully imagine the experience of war, but we do know war's aftermath and the toll that it can take on the human heart. This day remembers and acknowledges loss, and so do we remember those whom we have loved and lost. We hold their names and their faces in our mind's eye. We recall the gifts they gave to us through the strength of their being, the depth of their love, the courage of their dying, and the fullness of their living. In the quiet of this hour, their names and faces surround us, and they live with us in blessed memory. May we remain together in silence as a tribute to all that they have meant to us. Amen, and blessed be.
Spirit of life and love, God of memory, mourning, and history, bring before us the truths of serving and war. Bring before us, in compassion and in gratitude, those who faced violence so we may know peace. We remember these sacrifices through monuments. We remember these names carved into stone. Inscribe them on our hearts this day, so, like the stone that bears their names, freedom from violence may endure in our nation and around the world. Thank you for being with us today. If you're visiting, we invite you to leave your information at the welcoming table and to grab a brochure. One of the things that our congregation does to address the hunger and homelessness needs of the Tri-Cities is volunteer at Kitchen of Hope. The first Tuesday of the month team needs one more server. If you would like to be that person, please reach out to Mary Williamson or email minister@hvууc.org. And if you're interested in helping with Sunday services tech, whether it's running the video camera, pushing play when we have our videos to show in service, or editing and posting our services after they're recorded, email tech, that's TECH, @hvууc.org to express your interest. I also want to let you know that there will be no yoga this Tuesday on May 30th.
Thank you for being with us today on this day of grief and remembrance. I would invite you all to join us at coffee hour today. It's all rainy and dreary, so why not stick around a little longer with your friends and drink some coffee? We are very blessed to have veterans in our presence today who have the perspective and the stories that many of us do not. James Holmes, one of our Vietnam veterans, has stories to share at coffee hour if you would like to gather around and hear more about why today is important. Next Sunday, we are dramatically switching gears with a service about humor. The juxtaposition might give me whiplash. I'm glad we have a week between them. Laughter is a powerful medicine, and even if the tone of next week's service is light, it is absolutely sacred work. So I hope you can join me in this exploration of humor and see why it's a vital gift that we give to ourselves. Next weekend, we are going to have a booth at the Blue Plum Festival. We will have, it will be Friday evening and then all day Saturday. And we are looking for people to sit at the table with a partner. We'll have some brochures. We'll have a very easy community art project that you don't have to explain or have any art ability for. It should be a lot of fun. So please talk to me or to Bob today to let us know if you'd be interested in hanging out at the UU booth at Blue Plum. It's actually, we did the planning for it yesterday, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And kids and youth, don't forget to come up and tell me about something that you learned today after the service. I'm sure your parents will remind you. So what can I offer for a benediction on a day like today? Here's what I've got. May the beloved community of peace, justice, and liberty draw near to us, purely immanent, growing with every choice that we make for healing and hope. May our inherent worth and dignity cover us, protect us, and uphold us in all circumstances. May the complexities of this day teach us and create spaces within us for all that our diverse community contains. And may we go in peace this day and every day. Amen. Blessed be, and so mote it be. The oneness of everything is our closing hymn for this month. Every week I've heard us get a little better with this beautiful hymn. It's in the Teal Hymnal, number 1052, and it will be our last time singing this one for a while. As we sing our closing hymn, we will pass the offering plate. Our building, our staff, our social justice efforts, and so many other things are supported by the generosity of your pledges and donations. Thank you so much for your support. Please rise with us in body or spirit for our closing hymn, number 1052.